A supernatural God cannot have evidence for it. There's a very simple syllogism that makes this statement something worth investigating. Premise 1, there cannot be evidence of the supernatural. Premise 2, if God is supernatural. Conclusion, then there is no evidence of God. This is a hypothetical syllogism, as premise 2 is an if statement. So if you want to propose a God that isn't supernatural, then this argument obviously doesn't fit that God. This argument only works on gods that are proposed to be supernatural. To support the idea of this argument, we merely have to prove the tautology of the word supernatural. That is, what the word means. Every dictionary will have slight variance on a theme of what this word's meaning is, and if you look through several different dictionaries, you can sort of derive from them an average meaning across all of them for this word. The main definition is, in essence, beyond the natural. It is not testable by science. It is beyond science, and most dictionaries agree with that, if not implicitly, then outright say that that's the case. So, unless one is willing to find a dictionary that disagrees in whole with the idea that the supernatural is something that could be observed or could be tested in some way, then you're stuck. The tautology of this word is beyond the natural, supernatural. So the theists and apologists are stuck with this. There is no evidence of God if God is supernatural, by the definition of the word. Now, they might say, well, but there is evidence of God. Well, then it can't be supernatural. So it's one or the other. It can't be both simultaneously. You must pick one. God's either natural and then could be tested or observed through scientific method in some way, shape, or form, or it isn't, and therefore doesn't have any evidence. And so all you have then is faith. So running around telling atheists and skeptics that there's evidence of God is a waste of time if your God is supernatural. If your God is natural, well then, okay, you have evidence for it then. And you might say, well, I saw God. Well, that's visual. Therefore, there's something to produce the image of whatever God is, and that is something observed naturally, at least by your eyes. Hypothetically speaking, if we could get God to be seen again by more than just one person, and more than just maybe a large number of people, in fact, the thing that would really be worthwhile would be for God to be seen by a non-human eye, like a camera, for example. Video camera, regular camera, whatever. Get a picture of God. That would be something we could then investigate a little further, because we'd want to make sure that the picture was authentic. But it would be a natural phenomenon. Well, I've experienced God. So internally speaking, something has happened in your brain that you've called God. Well, we can test your brain, and we can see what happens in your brain when you experience God. And then God is natural. There's a problem, of course, with such experiments in that we can produce the effect of you feeling or seeing God by magnetic resonance and other chemical and physiological methodologies that we have. And you can't tell the difference between God just occurring and us making you feel God. So how do you know that one's actually God and the other one isn't? You can't. You just have to have faith. You just have to believe that your brain that is experiencing God, even though we can make your brain experience God, is actually experiencing a real God and not the fake God that we're making you experience by making your brain think that it's God. Because obviously that's not a genuine experience, right? Unless it is. But then we can't tell the difference. So we can't tell the difference between a natural God and another natural God. That's a problem. Of course, you might say, well, all right, I've had God do things in my life. Well, what does that mean? Well, God helped me to do X, Y, and Z. Well, what is that? What did it help you to do? Is it anything that we could perhaps test? Every test that's been performed upon prayer has resulted in utter failures. Chance alone can account for the hits that are gotten with prayer tests. So theists will say that God's untestable. Well, there you go then. It's faith, not fact. You don't have evidence. You can't have evidence. Now, if you're a Christian, that should be good news. The Bible encourages faith. Those that have faith are more blessed than those who had evidence. There's a whole story with, Thomas the doubter, who pokes Jesus in the holes to be sure that it's Jesus. And Jesus says, the people that believe without seeing are blessed. So it's good to have faith. The Bible implores people to have faith and celebrates faith. So why are Christians being dishonest with the skeptics and atheists by saying that there's evidence? It's very odd, isn't it, that apologists and theists will claim evidence when there couldn't be evidence. Unless, of course, their God isn't supernatural. Then that's a whole different story. But I just don't get when the Christians claim that there's evidence. It's almost like they didn't read the Bible or something. Which is kind of weird, because the Bible itself would be evidence of God, wouldn't it? But I guess it has to be so poorly written and constructed and full of so many doubts to make it something that enough people wouldn't be quite sure about it, so that the Bible, when taken as a whole, is something that you have to have faith in. There couldn't be any archaeological evidence for anything in the Bible. There couldn't be any test that you could run to verify anything in the Bible. Maybe you could verify a handful of places and a few people here and there. And that would be okay, because that wouldn't prove God. And it wouldn't prove the rest of the Bible either. So maybe you can skirt around the Bible being evidence by admitting to the fact that it's so evidently not supported by any fact at all that you simply have to have faith in the Bible. Which, after doing research into the history of the Bible, I'm pretty convinced that there's nothing to support it historically or archaeologically speaking. But maybe you're not. Maybe you want to insist that there is evidence, which means that the God you're arguing for can't be supernatural. So the Bible can't say that about God, but it does. So hey, celebrate that you have faith. Meanwhile, I'll celebrate that I have facts. You might get lucky and be right and having the right faith, but you could never know that for sure. With facts, at least I can know if I'm right or wrong. Given the choice between faith or facts, I'll take facts every single time.